Welcome to the E.A.T podcast. This is episode number 23. I'm your co-host, Jerry. The other co-host over there is Russ. Russ, how you been? It's been a busy few days for us.
I'm good. Yes, it was. We had a little Saturday night interview, and we're doing pretty good here, Mr. Blurry.
Yeah, we're. I don't know what's going on with this camera feed. I got two cameras going on here, and 1 minute I'm blurry, 1 minute I'm clean. I don't know what's going on. We're going to have to work on that, but let's get into it. We're gonna get into our sports real quick. We're gonna talk about the NFL, the NHL, MLB playoffs. We'll talk about the Benzinga conference I attended. We'll also talk about the Shaw interview real quick, and then we'll tie that into SuzyStocks coming on. Suzy is a person well known in the investor relations community. She works for a major Nasdaq company. She is going to give us some insight on things that happen behind the scenes on that end of things, and we'll have a little discussion with her after we do our sports. But let's get right into it, Russ, with the NFL. The NFL's in the news a lot lately with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we're rolling into the season, and I guess we'll start off with the second week in a row. I went 3-0 on the E.A.T podcast picks.
Loving it.
So I can't argue that in the last 2 weeks you're 5-1, so we're both rolling. I hope some people followed us. You know,
yeah.
Then again, they might have been scared off after week one when we went 0-3 and 1-2. But next week's matchups don't look good, though. They had a lot of big spreads, and that got scary. So, but right now we're rolling, and yeah. If anyone missed last night, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Seattle Seahawks in overtime, but it wasn't without a little controversy. Nothing too crazy, but a play where DK Metcalf basically caught the ball and should have just went out of bounds and stopped the clock. It ended up being irrelevant because the Seahawks kicked the field goal to tie the game anyway. But instead of going out of bounds, he tried to play the hero, I guess, and lost the ball. Luckily, it was recovered by a teammate and didn't cost them. But Shannon Sharp, who's one of the best tight ends to ever play the game, Hall of Famer, chimed in on Twitter that, what was he thinking there? So, of course, now we have a Twitter war between Shannon Sharp and DK Metcalf.
Gotta love it.
DK responding, saying basically, shut up, little boy, in which Sharp's response summed up pretty much was, you should be so lucky to have the resume I have when you're done. In which DK didn't like that very much, but I think somebody finally got in his head, and DK eventually agreed that he should have he'd hoped to have the resume that Shannon Sharp was. But I kind of laugh at some of these guys that, they don't like people criticizing them, and it was a valid criticism. Yes. That he just went out of bounds. I know that there's been issues in the past among current players shitting on Hall of Famers and whatnot for people opening their mouth. They some of them kind of feel that, oh, you're older, you're a washed. Listen, I think it actually I want to say it happened with the Red Sox and Dennis Eckersley. I think he had an issue with one of the pitchers, and they almost got into a fight. It was a big deal, but you gotta have some respect. If somebody gives you some criticism and they have a Hall of Fame resume, you might want to at least listen to a little bit of what they have to say.
It's not like Shannon Sharp is a scrub, who played 3 seasons, was injured, had 7 catches 1 year, 3 catches the next, and blew out his ACL, and that was his career. Yeah. Guy, look at the resume. Like he says, look at the resume. You hope to have something like I have when you're done. So that's it. That should have shut him up right there. That should have been the end all be all.
I think he had the record for most yards in a game at 214, and a Hall of Famer. And like I said, the criticism he gave was valid. It wasn't like he just shit on it for shitting on him. All he said was, "Why you playing the hero? Just go out of bounds."
And you know what? Shannon Sharp is in the position now where he can be a voice and he can criticize. He's been on the field. He took numerous hits. I mean, I saw that guy get laid out time after time and get up and just go to the next play like it was nothing. The guy took his licks. He is a Hall of Famer, one of the best ever. If he's going to criticize you, I would take the advice. I wouldn't just sit there and go, oh, you know what? Screw this guy. Take the advice and learn something from him, pal.
Yeah. So,
and then moving on, I mean, you got the Arizona Cardinals just absolutely rolling as the NFL's last undefeated team right now at 6-0. I mean, they are just mowing through. They're 2-0 at home. They're 4-0 away. 2-0 in the division, 3-0 in the conference. I mean, the point differential is 85 in their favor. This team looks like a legit Super Bowl contender 6 weeks in. Russ, what do you think?
Yeah, no, they're playing well. Kyler Murray's playing well. Cliff Kingsbury's got them got them rolling. And
a lot of stuff going on over there.
The way they look right now, they can beat anybody. So we'll see what happens. See how long they can play in the long run. But you got DeAndre Hopkins there, who's I still can't believe Houston traded him for what they traded him for. The guy's still playing great. And like I said, just Kyler Murray's playing outstanding, and it's gonna be the beginning of a lot of big things for Cliff Kingsbury's team. He, Murray's young, and he's definitely looking like a star. So,
absolutely. And then also, you had Jackson Mahomes criticizing for dancing on Sean Taylor's tribute number, and the media blowing that out of proportion. Russ, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, there was a VIP area set up on the side there, and
there was a VIP area set up on the number, so it wasn't just him alone. So the criticism is kind of zoned in on him, where maybe he shouldn't have taken a video or whatever the fuck he did, or TikTok or whatever. But it wasn't just him. They kind of cropped people out so that it would look like it was just him. But that's what the VIP area was. There was 10 to 15 people in that area on the number at any given time. So, but I think it's more or less that his family is under the spotlight, and his fiance was criticized because all she's been doing the last few weeks is blaming the refs and shitting on other people and complaining on Twitter. And then his son again, sorry, not his son. What is his brother? Jackson there was also under fire for pouring water on a Ravens fan last week after the loss. So his kind of family's been under the gun here, and it's starting to become a bit of a distraction. But I also think the media is kind of zoning in on it. So media loves the controversy. But I don't think it's as big deal as people think it was. I still don't understand if you're having a memorial for Sean Taylor and have his number, painted into the past the end zone there, why you'd make the VIP area on it as opposed to next to it. But I think that was more of a dumb decision by the Redskins, Washington football team, whatever the fuck you want to call them these days.
They're going to be something different next year.
It should have been Washington team football, just so they can call it what the fuck.
With all the drama that goes on like this, you have to make sure that it doesn't get into the locker room. And, the media is going to go at it. Social media is going to go at it. The trolls are going to come out, and you're going to start hearing things about, hey,
sure,
this story is getting into the locker room, and that's the last thing you want.
Start getting teammates tell your fiance to shut the fuck up there, or tell your brother to stop coming to the game, stop taking it away from the football team.
Yeah, that's the last thing you need, the last thing you want. I absolutely agree with that.
So, other than that, there's nothing crazy going on in football. The Giants and Jets are competing for the worst team ever. Again. My Colts are the giant enigma.
Hey, listen, 1 minute they look great. I'll give it to you. They're breaking runs for 70, 80 yards like it's nothing.
Taylor's busting out again, so he's.
And then the next minute, they can't stay on the field for an offensive drive. It's a turnover or 4 and out. It's 1, 2, 3. I mean, if they can put it together in that weak division, actually, that's going to be a team.
It's not even really been the big issue. They haven't really been going 4 and out. It's that they've been getting into the red zone all the time, and then they can't do anything. They have the worst red zone calling that I've seen in a long time, and they're not capitalizing on it.
And they got an owner that'll pull the trigger on offensive coordinator like yesterday, and that'll be the end of them.
All right, moving over to the NHL here. The Seattle Kraken got their first win over Nashville, a 4-3 win, and for their first franchise win.
Did you see the banner they hung up in Nashville for that?
I don't think that was real.
No, it wasn't real. But Nashville likes to hang up banners for big things. So the banner that's going up was they suffered the first loss for against the Seattle Kraken in their franchise history.
News out west appears that the relationship between Phil Kessel and the Arizona Coyotes is pretty much over. I guess they're looking to move him, or he's looking to move out. It'll be interesting to see where he falls. I think he can still provide a good jump to an offense. Just feed him a few cheeseburgers and he'll be happy.
So let me ask you. I mean, this is a guy that's been in Toronto and didn't work out there. Went to Pittsburgh, didn't really work out there. Now he's in Arizona.
He got a cup in Pittsburgh.
And then he left. My point is he's been in a couple of places. Now he's in Arizona, and it's not.
I think the reason he left was more or less cap issues.
Is it? I was just going to get to that. Is it just contract with him? Is it that he's a hot and cold, streaky player, and he wears out his welcome? I mean,
I don't know.
What's going on with him that? He's on the move a lot.
I don't know. I've heard people talk good things about him, but he just has that look that he's just a dick. But he has that look about him that just says, "Don't approach me, fuck off," But I've heard good things about him in the locker room. So I don't know.
He's talented. Don't get me wrong. He's a very talented player, but it just seems like he's on the move way too much.
I think it was more or less the issue in Pittsburgh was I think it was cap. They won their cup. I think they couldn't keep everybody, because you're paying Malkin and Crosby, and Letang. But I think that was more of the issue. I don't.
And they're not off to a great start either. I mean, Arizona got blown out against Columbus 8-2, and they lost to Buffalo 2-1, and now they got the St. Louis Blues tonight. So I mean, it seems like the wheels have fallen off already with Arizona.
Yeah, it's early though, but I don't see them. I don't see them doing much either. So, and then moving on to sad news, Toxicology came back on Jimmy Hayes, and it was a combination of fentanyl and cocaine, and what do you call it? His fiance or wife, whoever she is, was I think it was his wife, was completely shocked. To me, this is just—it's not really the cocaine thing. It's the fentanyl. It's probably with some drug dealer that decided I'm going to cut the cocaine with fentanyl and get people addicted. Because even with heroin overdoses, the common denominator is usually they cut it with fentanyl.
Yep.
So he probably was just looking to have a good time, do a few lines, and some asshole drug dealer cut it. But my question is I don't dive into it. What is, I know fentanyl is super cheap and it gets people super hooked, but this is what kills people. I mean, got to start, I think at this point, I don't know if there's any possible good that comes out of fentanyl that I think that we should start upping charges as far as, people who get caught with it.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely killer. It's definitely bad. There's nothing good you can say about it. And maybe the penalties are too light. Maybe it's just the access is too easy. The education is not good enough. I mean, there's a variety of reasons. We all know what's going on in this world with drugs. I mean, some things are getting legalized, which is fine. Marijuana you can legalize tomorrow. I was just at the cannabis conference. Many companies are giving you a lot of education about things. Fentanyl, completely different animal.
Yeah, it's like I said, dude, I haven't even heard of anybody overdosing on cocaine since like the early 80s.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard anything involved in cocaine. It's just fentanyl. Even with MDMA and people popping E.A.T, usually the same thing is somebody cut it and popped in there fentanyl. That's the main killer.
Yep.
But I me personally, I think they should up the class on the drug fentanyl and put out larger fines, because I don't know if there's a good side to it. I don't know if it's used in hospitals to. I don't know what it's the good use of it is for. Right now, all I see is it's the main the common denominator in people being killed. So yeah, very very sad.
It's very sad. I mean, his brother's a former Ranger and a current Flyer. I mean, I can't imagine what he's going through.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, it is what it is. It's just I hate to say it. I had my fun as a younger kid, but in the end, you play the game. You got to understand the risks, and unfortunately, that was one of them. But
all right, then moving on with the Rangers, you got the Kravtsov drama with he didn't make the team out of camp. They sent them to the Hartford Wolfpack in the AHL, and he turns around and says, "Hey, I'm not going to go," and he immediately gets suspended and flies out to Russia, and now he's over in Russia watching some hockey games. And
he did go back?
Yeah, there's reports that he's in Russia. He's over there watching hockey games. He was spotted in a game over the weekend.
I would think that he would have stayed here just with I don't know what COVID protocols are for flying international, and he does want to trade. So I don't know.
Yeah, and now look, you got Kako hurt. You got Strome hurt. You got this lineup is going into pieces already. And this guy could have been called up already. Look at this. Now what?
They're calling up Morgan Barron for tonight because Capo is injured. And we already lack right-wing depth. So you're calling up Morgan Barron, who's naturally plays center and left wing. He doesn't play right wing. So you would have to think that he has to be kicking himself right now, that he would have been called. If he just did what he was told, he would have been called up already. I don't know the relationship there, but, Gallant's a new coach. So it's not like there's history there. Obviously there was some in the organization, there was some stuff going on, but basically the problems he had in Russia, going to Russia the first time and not going to H, basically revolved around the old regime.
Yep.
So this is a new regime between Drury and Gallant and said, listen, hey, you need a little more development. Go there. He wanted to be a whiny baby. I think there's fault on both sides. We seem to be mismanaging prospects. The same thing with Elias Anderson. But there also has to be that, listen, you got to sometimes listen. You got to go down to, AHL, do what you do, and then, listen, come back and prove everybody wrong.
And this was a guy that got drafted and went to the KHL. Didn't even come over here immediately as a 18-year-old. Stayed over there and did his thing in Russia for a year or so, and then came over. So maybe right from the jump, this was a bad experiment or a bad draft pick and a bad idea with the way things were handled.
Maybe.
And now we're seeing it now several years later where, hey, he's back in Russia. He's not playing for us. What did he really give us so far? And you wasted a good pick on this guy to now what? Give him away for nothing? I don't think they should be doing that either. That's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, this is a new regime with Drury, new coach. I would think they would have talked about this. That they're talking. Oh, the relationship is, irreparable. Whatever. It's unrepairable.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's a common theme with this team, and I'm not liking it. I'm not liking it at all with them.
Well, we'll see what happens, but I don't know. I think hindsight's always 20/20. Knowing this shit was going to happen, I would have said just pay Bush the $5 million a year, and we'll deal with it. At least we know he was going to get 20-something goals.
Yeah, I mean,
and then the man who can't stay out of the news apparently with the San Jose Sharks, Evander Kane, suspended 21 games for a COVID protocol violation. And from what I'm reading, is that he provided them with fake vaccination forms.
Which is unbelievable.
Which is, I guess, illegal in the United States and Canada. So he was suspended for 21 games. And I guess it was, I guess it's all true because he put out a statement already that said, listen, I made a big mistake and I will learn from it and I will go to counseling and that I apologize.
It's crazy.
So for any of those people that actually watch the sports world, the WNBA finished up this weekend. The Chicago Sky won their first ever championship with the help of the WNBA GOAT, one of the GOATs, Candace Parker. So they won there, and then
that was an upset, by the way. That was an upset. That was
my only thing is that they want to push the game. They want to push the game, and that's fine. It's understandable. They want to grow it, but I still don't understand the logic between putting it at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday when 90% of the sports world is watching football. I think it's just a bad time. You want to grow it, put it up. I would say try to. I know it sucks, being that there's not really watched. I would at least try to put it on better times that the average person would watch it.
Yeah, the WNBA, obviously it's behind the eight ball when you're putting it up against MLB playoffs. You're putting it up against the NFL Sunday. I mean, you got the NHL that had a game going on as well. I mean, it's not good that you're not going to draw the faint to draw with those matchups going up against you. It's not a good look. There needs to be some kind of better scheduling going on with them, and that that shows it right there. But again, that was a big upset that no one predicted the WNBA finals to go that way. It should have went the other way. And when you see something like that happen, it's always a good story for the underdog to win. You know that.
Yeah, they thought Taurasi and Griner were going to take it, but
yeah, they did.
And then starting off with baseball here, the Giants, which we talked about this last time.
Yep.
Having the Giants 200-plus win teams go against each other. The Giants lost to the Dodgers. The series ended on a check swing. It was a check swing. It was not a full swing.
No,
being called strike three, and it quite egregious. I don't understand how an umpire could look at that and call. I think the guy panicked and called it an out, because anything close, I would think you want to say no. You wouldn't want to decide the outcome of a game. And
no, you don't.
The other things that doomed the Giants, but that being the last out was quite ridiculous. Especially considering that he did not take a full swing.
No, it wasn't. It clearly was not a full swing. It's like
maybe
the guy had to play the catch.
Yeah. So maybe a little karma for the way they won the series, and with the Braves have come out and had 2 consecutive walk-offs to take a surprising 2-0 lead.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna talk to you about this for a second. These games are not taking place in LA, right? LA won 106 games, and they don't have home field because they didn't win their division.
That's the other thing too, is you had home field for a team that won less games. But either way, the Jacques Pedersen, who came from LA, is starting to become this year's Mr. October. Yeah, seriously. But either way, I even though I'm a Mets fan, I have no problem with the Braves taking out the Dodgers. I can't stand the Dodgers. But,
hey, listen, as long as the Red Sox are beating the cheating Houston Astros, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and going over to that series, Red Sox 1-0 and came into Game 2 with a grand slam in consecutive inning 9-5 rout of Houston. That third game will be tonight, and I'd like to see the Red Sox win. I think it'd be interesting if Houston ends up winning the World Series after all the cheating allegations, and they lose Springer, and then they also who else did they lose? They lose Verlander, and
they lost Garrett Cole to the Yankees.
Yeah, Garrett Cole. So they come back after all the cheating scandal, and they come back and they win again. Props to them. But even if they win again, I want to see somebody rip Altuve and Correa's shirts off, just to make sure.
Hey, by the way, that home run trot that you saw, I'm not a big fan of when you're pointing to your watch and you're pointing to the dugout and everything else with the antics that are going on. I mean, just you hit a home run, start jogging, make it around the bases, and let's go. There's no reason for the antics at that point.
I hear you.
It makes you look like a clown.
But all right, and then I'm gonna get going here in a minute. But I saw some good pics of you at surprisingly at a weed conference.
Hey, listen, I gotta tell you honestly, Benzinga did a phenomenal job at the Cannabis Capital Conference that I went to. It was absolutely amazing. Let alone the food selection was like a wedding. Let me just tell you. I mean, the first day we were there, we were eating sushi. They got dumplings. The desserts, it was like a Viennese hour. I mean, it was unbelievable. The CEOs and the representatives from all the companies that were there speaking, very knowledgeable, very informative. Education was great. It's going to tie into Suzy coming on in about 2 minutes right now with her end of things, working in investor relations as well. But I mean, everything was done there. It was great. I contacted Benzinga, sent me a press pass, and no joke, I want to say it was like 12 minutes. It was a home run for me. And the fact that I covered all of it, and we had Sandro there from GGII, and he's a home run as well. Having 2 interviews with him on Twitter and all the good stuff that they do, and then the press release coming out Friday morning about working with Rick Ross and the new things they're doing was just phenomenal. I mean, listen, the next one that comes up, we got to go together and do stuff. If thing works out for us and we can do it, it'll be a home run for both of us. We'll definitely get a lot of good interviews and a lot of good knowledge passed on to the podcast.
Sounds good.
And then finally, our interview on Saturday. The Shar interview on Saturday was great. A lot of cool feedback and stuff with that. We talked to her for an hour and 40 minutes. We could have kept going with her. And it was great to have her on. Very knowledgeable about a lot of stuff, and I definitely want to have her back on if it works out. But with that being said, Russ, you're going to get out of here, and I'm going to have Suzy on for a little one-on-one, and we'll see you Sunday for our football picks.
Have a
And
good week,
by
everybody.
the way, your morning message, if you could do that again next week, if you could do your good morning message again next week, that would be good.
All right, we'll try. All right, have a good week, everybody.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy. All right. All right, guys. So we're going to have Suzy come on the show. Suzy is an investor relations specialist. So here we go.
Hey, Jerry. Sorry, Memphis just jumped up on my lap.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Wow, Memphis just taking over the show already. Look at this. 3 seconds in.
I'm not kidding. He wasn't even near me, and then the second he heard us talking, he came over and like jumped on my lap. So this is Memphis. Only.
Memphis is making his podcast debut. So are you, Suzy. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. So just a little heads up for everybody. Suzy works in the world. She is a director of investor relations for a publicly traded Nasdaq company. We're not going to get into the company or anything that they're doing or like that because it's just not what this is about. This is not a company that I'm invested in as well. Neither is Russ. It's just we're going to have a conversation and go over some things about what investors should be looking at, some stuff that what companies should be putting out and what happens when they don't put out something. We're just going to get into a bunch of good stuff, and I'll tease you along the way a little bit.
Can't wait.
All right, so like I said, you're a director of investor relations. So listen, it's extremely important what you do, right? I mean, it seems to me like from the outside looking in, you're basically juggling communications with many departments within a company. So between marketing, legal, public, information officers, and their employees, the executive staff like CFOs and CEOs, you're basically the liaison from the financial community, and which is shareholders and potential investors, and you're the middleman to the outside world. Is that basically how you can sum it up?
Yeah, exactly. Which is actually why I like investor relations. It touches so many different parts of the organization. So my last company, for example, had about 65,000 people who worked for them. My company now has over 150,000. So it's a big company, and we're spread out across 30 countries. And you deal with legal, you deal with accounting, you deal with FP&A, and then at the same time, you do work with the CEO and the CFO, and it's great in that regard because you learn so much and you're involved in so many different meetings. I'll never forget, like when I first Memphis is all over me. Had my first meeting with the CEO, and they're like asking me, "What's my opinion?" And I was like 23 at the time. Like I had no idea what I was doing in that room with all these high level executives. But it's been great, and I've learned so much. And you do learn from everyone you work with as well, which is again one of the reasons I really like it.
And also, you guys are responsible for communicating with the SEC, which I'm assuming that has to be a big undertaking as well, with filings and publishing 10Ks, 8Ks, memos and everything else that you guys do, all the reports that have to go out legally and reporting wise. But you're basically fully integrated in everything. So I hope you can give us a bunch of insight on this, because it's me. I'm sure it's gonna be interesting to the viewing audience as well. For the investor relations side of things, because it's not something that as a retail investor you really see that much.
Yeah, it is. It's so funny actually when I'm on Twitter and I see people talking about tweeting that they've contacted the IR department because they're a shareholder. And I hate to say it, but it's like retail shareholders just don't get that much attention because they don't have that much money. So it's always funny to me almost when I see people like complaining like, "Oh, I'm going to complain to your CEO." And in fact, people do that. You get emails all the time where an investor's emailing you and then they'll copy the CEO or CFO, like reaming the company. And it's kind of funny because, like, what do you do with it? You just delete it. It's like there's nothing you can really, or you can't really say or do anything. And with individual retail investors, it is hard when you're kind of not afforded or given the opportunity to speak with someone at a big public company. Obviously, we are involved a little bit with OTC stocks, and it's a little bit different with OTC, which is understandable. But working with retail investors, I do almost like feel bad for them.
We're gonna get into OTCs a little bit. That's a little bit down the line, but it's good that you brought that up because I know it's a big thing with the listening audience. But what would you say the hardest part of your job in investor relations is? Is it the lack of communication within the company, where legal's not talking to marketing and marketing is not talking to you, and the CEOs and there's something else is going on? Like, is that the biggest thing, or is there something else to it?
I would say we're pretty good at connecting and collaborating with each other. One of the hardest parts, at least for me, is you have to know literally everything about the company. You have to know top to bottom the financials. You have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to explain your model. You have to be able to explain consensus and sell side models. And then more than that, you have to be able to explain your product or your service or the technology. So for example, my last company was in the semi industry. That was so hard for me. I didn't come from a semi background. So that was really difficult. And now the industry I'm in, I'm still kind of in the tech industry as well, but not only do I need to know my company top to bottom, I have to know our closest competitors top to bottom. And then I have to know our suppliers, because there's so much going on with like the supply chain. And then I have to know about our customers and what they are doing and their demand expectations, because their demand will directly impact our demand. So you have to know a lot. It's a lot of reading. So if you like to read, IR is for you.
And now let me ask you, how do you handle a situation when it comes up that you have to deliver bad news? So, I mean, obviously your competitors are going to pounce on this and make you guys look bad. The retail world or the investing world is going to make you look bad. But how does it affect market sentiment? How does it affect investors, shareholders, the media, Wall Street? All of this goes into the thought process when you're going to say, hey, we're not going to hit our numbers, or hey, our supplier can't meet our demand, or our contract with so-and-so is about to run out and we haven't come up with a solution to it. How do you handle when that situation comes up where the bad news is coming, it's got to come out, and it's going to be bad?
Yeah. So good question. I won't really talk about my current company now. But
let's not talk about your company, just in general terms. Like I said, we don't want to...
No. I'll for sure. I'll give an example of my last company.
Okay.
We missed numbers a few times. We cut our dividend at one point. And those are really difficult conversations that you have to have, not just with your shareholders and investors, but you're also, when you have the earnings calls, you're also talking to, again, your customers, your vendors, and your employees, most of all, as well. So you have to manage what you're communicating to everybody, because everybody has different expectations, and everybody has a different interest and believes, you should take some sort of action, and it could differ from each other, right? And when it comes to investors, obviously my approach and, what I've always learned from everyone I've worked with in IR is always, you just have to be honest with them. You can't BS these guys. Their job is to know, again, everything about your company too. So you can't get away with just BSing them or trying to distract them. You have to be forthright and very honest, because they'll figure it out, right? So you don't want to mislead anyone either. And then when it comes to the management can be very tough, because they, for example, don't ever want to lower guidance, which is very expected, obviously. That reflects poorly upon management and upon the team's execution. But you, again, have to be honest with the management team as well. And you are, in a way, advocating for your shareholders, and you have to communicate to them and be effective in your communication that this is what needs to be done, and you almost like have to bite the bullet, and it can be tense and tough conversations, but most of the time they come around to it, and they're receptive.
So with that being said, Suzy, is it too little or too much conversation or too much wording works against you guys, where if you don't say enough, that's kind of going to bite you in the butt? And if you say too much, it kind of looks like where you're going for something and you're just the company's being too chatty to try and not cover their tracks in a bad way, but cover their tracks on the mishap that we're discussing. Is that the case where too little or too much can work against you?
Oh, definitely. And when it comes to earnings calls, for example, we have to write the scripts of what the CEO and what the CFO is saying. And there's definitely some tech companies, I listen to their earnings calls and they are so long, incredibly boring, like you have no interest in it. And you can, like, I'd much rather read the transcript, but you can't read. You have to listen because you want to listen to the tone and you want to listen to the hesitation, which you can't capture in transcripts. So it is interesting because you can get lost in like an hour-long phone call. Other companies and other executives prefer, just get to the point and keep it very straightforward and simple. My approach and how I try and keep all of my communications is as simple and as straight to the point as possible. I try to keep everything, very clean, summarized. I try and approach it like executives don't have time to read an email or read a long message. So you give key highlights, and then if they want to learn more, if they want to know more, of course, they can look at, more reports, but you try and keep it simple. And same with investors. Investors can see through the BS. If you're just filling time and filling a conversation and filling a phone call, they're going to know that you're wasting their time and they'll call you on it too. So I think it's overall, I try and be as simple as I can and be as honest.
That's going to tie right into my next question perfectly. And that's retail investing. So retail investing has become huge in the last year and a half, 2 years, where now you have so many eyes looking at reports, so many eyes looking at, financial statements, opinion letters, case studies, everything, competitors and what you guys are doing. And has retail being as big as it has become, that made your job harder?
For me personally, my company, no, but that's
okay. But in general, for most publicly traded companies.
Oh, I'm sure. Like I could not even imagine some of these like meme stocks being in IR for one of those companies. I would go crazy because you're not in control. You have no control over the stock price or the movement. Not just, meme stocks, but even, more controversial companies. Like, I don't want to name names, but, I'm sure you can think of a few CEOs who are very eccentric or very, out there on Twitter. And
chatty.
That's tough. Yeah, that's tough. You have to deal with that. And I would hate that. Again, not having any control is not good. So retail investors and actually on a personal note, like myself, I hate those stocks as well because sometimes they trade and they just don't make any sense. And you're like, why is this going up? I think everyone who's listening, who's in our group knows what stock I'm talking about that I hate. And it should be so low. And it's not. And it's driving me crazy because it has nothing to do with the underlying company and the financials and the fundamentals, right? It's just people on Twitter and people like pumping it. And it makes no sense. It's very, very difficult. So as an IR professional as well, that would be very tough to manage and try and deal with.
I feel like I've given you the script here because the next question is going to tie right into social media, which is funny that you just brought that up. But so you got social media, you got Reddit groups, you got stock twits, you got Discord groups, you got Twitter, Facebook, in terms of all that info that can just be pushed out so quick, whether it's, true or not, rumor or complete, just basically a pump where it's, so-and-so company's going to be working with Amazon or so-and-so is going to be working with Microsoft. Does that make your job hard as well? When something like that happens and it says company X is going to work with Microsoft, if you were working for Microsoft, would your department get flooded with phone calls like, oh, are you going to work with this little guy who's an OTC stock or a small cap? Or is this just rumored? Does the phone call push and surge come flying into you guys about that? And how do you answer that?
I'm sure it does. Again, I haven't had to deal necessarily with that in my current role, but my last role, there was a lot of M&A speculation that happened a lot. And you have to deal with that. Most of the time, your sophisticated investors, your top investors know it's not true.
Okay.
They might hear something or they might know like a hedge fund is pushing some sort of rumor. And they'll call and they'll tell you about it or they'll ask you about it, but they kind of know for the most part. I would imagine working for some of these, again, going back to the social media stocks and like all the meme stocks, I could imagine that there are individual like retail shareholders that reach out and they want to know. And again, I doubt anyone from one of those companies would email them back, but maybe, I don't know. And definitely their top investors, if it gained a lot of traction, I'm sure it could spark questions.
Oh, it has to. I mean, it opens so many eyes. I mean, every morning I'm sure you're seeing it, but every morning you're seeing thelion.com, StockTwits, Wall Street Bets, all these, different social media forums have the most mentioned and most talked about stocks. And then the next thing you know, you see that stock move that day, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. The stock is moving based on the social media following. And that's got to be a nightmare for companies when they see that happen. I know companies say, hey, we really don't care about the stock price. But when it comes down to it, you do care about the stock price because you're trying to raise money. You're pleasing investors. You're pleasing customers. It's a huge juggling act with everything that's going on. And then when you add in this social media monster, it just has to make things go haywire for you, right? Yeah,
definitely. And again, not being able to answer to management or to the board on why your stock is moving, you have to be able to explain that every day. So if something happens throughout the day and our stock dips, so for example, last week, there was a lot of energy plays going around. There was a lot of talk about solar. And we are in some ways connected to the solar space. And so we were impacted by that, not to a great degree, but slightly. And more so, some of our peers were impacted. And so we, of course, reached out to management and just gave them a heads up, like, this is what is happening with our stock right now. This is why it's trading at whatever it's trading at. And you have to be able to explain that. So when you can't explain that, it's not good.
And now when you have that conversation, when an investor relations person has that conversation with their CEO or CFO or COO, whoever, executive management, when they have that conversation, does the CEO want you guys to put out a message like, hey, we know this is going on, but we're not involved in it, or this isn't, the stock price shouldn't be a dictation of we're involved in something or not involved in something. It's social media pumping or that aspect of things. What does the executive staff want you guys to do when this happens?
I mean, for the most part, you can't do anything about it. You always just have to comment that, you don't speculate on M&A rumors, which is, standard across the board. Even if it is true, even if it's not true, that's always like the response. So it's unfortunate. At the same time, there's different listing requirements from the exchanges that if there are rumors going around that are very egregious and that are affecting your stock price dramatically, you do have to address those. I haven't had to deal with that personally, but that is something that is, some oversight, but for the most part, it goes, you can't address it. It is what it is. You just have to deal with it.
Okay. And as everyone who's invested right now in S&P stocks, right now it's S&P season. 70 or so companies this week are reporting earnings. And when this happens, do you as an IR person look at these balance sheets? Do you look at the investor calls or listen to the investor calls? Do you look at everything that these companies put out and then dissect it? And, for you personally, do this and go, all right, maybe our company can work on things or improve ourselves better by what, company XYZ has done. Do you look at what other companies do and try and better yourself and your company?
Of course, yeah. Especially right now with the pandemic and with, again, the supply chain, going back to that, it's very tough, the messaging. You have to get across, again, to your shareholders, your board, your employees. Sorry, Memphis is, maybe it's going to come up, maybe not. Your board, your employees, your customers, your suppliers. That's really hard to do. That's really, really, really hard to do, really hard to manage. So I always listen to well, you have to listen anyways, but you pay attention to what they're saying and what they're signaling. And at the same time, you want to hear, so you can learn, because your procurement or your supply chain, that impacts them. So they would want to know that. And on the other hand, like, you just want to know, how are they messaging it? How are they framing it? Because if they're a direct competitor and they have their earnings call a day before me and they say something completely opposite than what I have written for our CEO or CFO, then there's a problem. If, a peer is saying demand looks great and we're saying, no, demand doesn't look good the second half, that's bad. That's inconsistent. And then, of course, the street would want to know, why are you guys inconsistent? Why do you guys think demand is bad? And why do they think demand is good? Yeah. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, I always listen. I always pay attention. And
so the key words that companies and competitors put out, you have to pay attention to when you're listening to these calls. And if company A is saying, oh yeah, there's no semiconductor issue, there's no supply chain issue, there's nothing with us, but then, company, X as that competitor is saying, oh yeah, we have the complete opposite. Well, how is that working out? How is that possible? Who's BSing who?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, if that happens and you're confused yourself and you want to know, like, read the footnotes, because a lot of times something is buried in the footnotes, or
footnotes are keys.
Yeah, or they're doing some sort of, like, I know someone who likes to phrase their non-GAAP numbers as like core numbers. And I read that the first time and I'm like, what, like, core? What are they talking about? Core? Is that their non-GAAP? Is that they're just like, why does it say core? And then I read more and it's not even like really non-GAAP. It's like kind of screwy, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone says like weird stuff that you have to kind of decipher like what they're saying. And is it true? Because the wording is very strategic. It's very specific and well thought out. And so a lot of times, like, even if they say something, I'll go back and I'll read. And I always double check like numbers. So if they're giving me numbers, I'm not kidding, tick off every single number that they go through. And I want to make sure that, it's kind of like one of those trust but verify situations.
Okay. All right. So you alluded to before that you're involved in your current job with some OTC stuff. So I'm not going to get into the companies that you work with, but let's just cover OTC as a general umbrella. Are all OTCs scams? Because they get a bad rap. I mean, they really do. It seems like OTCs with chatty CEOs, the people complain that the CEOs are talking too much. Then you get OTC companies that the CEOs don't say a word, and people are like, well, there must be something going on behind the scenes. It's got to be a scam of some sort because they're just not giving us any information. Now, I don't know, I do invest in OTCs here and there, and I'm not saying anything I invest in is bad or good, or I don't want anything that you invest in or that you work with is good or bad, but just in general, why does OTC get a bad rap? Why is that?
Okay, just to clarify, we don't work with any OTC companies.
Okay.
But they get a bad rap because I think they are, for the most part, there's no regulation. There's no oversight, right? So they just like make stuff up, right? None of their financials are audited. So you go through and you try and look at their financials. You want to see their balance sheet. You want to see, their income statement. And you're like, who did this? It's some like random in, Kentucky. I don't know, whatever.
It's some guy running something out of the back of a nail salon.
Exactly. And you're like, you don't even know who these people are. And so OTC is like so like funny in some regard because you go and you research, and it's like every single person that their name comes up, you want to figure out every single thing about them. I mean,
Yep.
it's extreme. So the lack of oversight, the lack of regulation, it's makes it very, okay, and I guess very easy to scam people, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of really good companies in
There
OTC
are.
as well. Yeah, and it's hard to figure out like what's real and what's fake. Half the time, like people on Twitter literally drive by these addresses that we get and they take pictures, and they're like shacks on the side of the road.
It's
like,
a shed. I mean, it's nothing.
this is supposed to be somebody's office, and you're like what is happening?
It's a porta potty.
Yeah, it's so weird. But at the same time, yeah, there are a lot of legitimate companies. You just have to like look really hard and find them. They're gems.
But they exist. I'm not saying every company is a scam that's on the OTC market. Some companies start out that way, and then they'll uplist and uplist and uplist, and the next thing you know, they're a Nasdaq company with $100 million in revenue and sales and everything, and they're legit. They happen. Just not everything is a scam. But with that said, the SEC just recently changed the rules for reporting companies, and now you have a lot of companies that are pink current or trying to get pink, and it's weeding out the quote unquote so-so scams, as was the plan with that. What are your thoughts on the SEC rule change and the companies that are getting pink? Do you think that, let me phrase it this way. Do you think the companies that are not pink now, several weeks into this process after the deadline, should people be invested in them that they're not pink, or should they be considered the taboo, the quote unquote scam, and there should be some red lights and bells and whistles going off because they're not pink yet?
I mean, that's a tough question because on one hand, again, there's gems that are in there, and some did apply before the cutoff date, and OTC markets was just not prepared, right? And a lot of people a lot of companies did not become pink current by the deadline that was established. And I also think just the approach for implementing that deadline in general was very chaotic. As you know, there was lists floating around, like what can you trade, what can you not trade, as of what date. It was so bizarre. It's unfortunate, but the companies that aren't pink current, I think there are plenty of people who still believe in them and still invest in them. I mean, and I'm not dissuading or saying otherwise. I think, of course, like anything else, you have to do your research and find out what's the likelihood that this company is going to actually do what they're saying, which is something I keep in mind from the beginning, that at the same time, as much as we want to blame OTC markets and the regulation, implementation, whatever, these companies did know about the deadline.
Oh yeah,
just like did not file. And
they dragged their feet or whatever they did. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's on you too.
And with that being said, so a company doesn't gain pink access by the September deadline, and now all of a sudden the stock takes a hit, and they could be a legit company, and now that stock hit is just giving them a bad reputation, and people aren't going to want to invest in them. People that were invested sold their shares or want to sell their shares when they can, and it's just a downward spiral for them, which isn't really fair. But that's the rap they're going to get after all this plays out, which is unfortunate for them, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the companies themselves, they'll be fine. The management team, they're if they know that they are, they have something in the works, something they've planned, they might not care so much. It's really the retail investors that are the losers in the situation, and it's just terrible because people, especially in OTC and especially lately, have been investing so much money, and then they're losing a lot of it, and it's really sad. It's unfortunate.
So when you see Robinhood, and I'm going to use them for an example because I've said on this show numerous times, I'm not a fan of them. I don't trade on them. I can't say enough bad things about Robinhood and what they've done. When you see a company like Robinhood limiting the stocks that you can buy and or sell, and then you see something like Schwab limiting the stocks you can buy or sell before an OTC deadline, or even E-Trade as well, how does that look to you on the investor side of things, where these platforms are limiting the availability to trade a certain stock?
as an investor, that would be infuriating. I think I have a Robinhood account. No surprise. I know everyone's probably laughing because I have like 1,000 accounts that I forget about.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I think I still have a Robinhood account. That didn't happen to me where the stocks were restricted and I wanted to get in or out. But if I was an investor in one of those stocks and that happened, I would be infuriated. A lot of them, again, lost out on money, whether they lost out on gains or whether they literally had a lot of losses, then they lost money. And so either way, that was just really, again, an awful situation.
Yeah.
Both ways. And I'm very happy I was not caught in that, but it's sad for everyone who was.
So let me ask you, as a retail investor yourself, and somebody who's behind the scenes as investor relations for a company that's Nasdaq traded, when you look at things and everything that they put out, everything that the competitors are doing, do you find yourself investing more in big board stuff, small caps, OTC? I mean, all three are three different animals if you look at them on the outside of things. But where do you personally see yourself investing the most, and why?
I've been all over the place lately, and I really need to.
Perfect.
I was really into OTC over like the summer, and then I don't know. I just I got impatient. Okay, that's what it is. I got impatient.
Oh, sure. Yes, that's a lot of people are impatient. I've been guilty of it as well. Yes.
Yeah. So I haven't been. I mean, I have a couple OTC stocks, but I'm not really paying that much attention to them at this point. I have been, very busy with work, and it's unfortunate because when you're trying to trade and work, a 9 to 5, like many people are, and they do, you have to modify your strategy, and your hours impact obviously when you can trade and when you can pay attention. And there's so many times where I'm like, someone please tag me because I'm gonna be in a meeting. And
I'm in the dark.
I live and die by like my watch. And if like my watch will vibrate in a meeting, then I can like peek at it and think like, okay, great, this stock is taking off. But over the last few weeks, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times you guys have tagged me about a play that I was in, and I'm sitting there, without my phone, or whatever, can't do anything about it.
And then it goes to the moon, or it crashes to the bottom of nothing.
Yeah, and you get stuck. So I need to think about my strategy for sure. And lately I've been playing small caps, but big boards, I think to some degree are easier because
okay.
I mean, it's especially like for my long accounts, my Roth accounts, you kind of just set them and forget them. So that's what I've been doing for the most part. But small caps has been a little bit of fun lately.
Okay, and then today, I had to do my research, so I had to look at your Twitter. I had to see what you were tweeting about, and then today, lo and behold, you put out your watch list, which I liked because definitely gave me something to talk about. So the tweet today was your watch list, and the love was your bros. So yeah. I want to hear about all these, but I'm just going to recap it real quick, and then you can get into why each one is labeled what. But your love is bros. The Earn It category was STX and TSLA. The Can't Stop, Won't Stop was ANY and FCEL. And the Poorhouse, which is an inside joke with all of us, is the Poorhouse, was BBIG. So can you just give us a little insight on why you labeled them, where they were, and what your thinking is with each of those?
Yeah, so bros, I love bros lately. I've been in it since the IPO. It's been super easy to trade. For me, at least, I've been watching the stock price and the movement, and you kind of get used to the characteristics. If you can like really learn a stock and you can play it, some people just play one or two stocks because they know them so well, and they can make as much money as they want to or need to off of that. So I think bros is it for me, at least for now. And it's actually funny because I know about bros. They're a coffee company, Dutch Bros. I'm from Oregon, and they started in Oregon, and it's hilarious to me because, you know, I have actually one of my best friends and my mom is definitely watching this right now. And my mom has been asking, like, when do I buy it? When do I buy it? And I've been like telling her and my sister and my brother, like, when to buy, when to sell. And it's very tedious and time consuming, but it's fun because I have like a personal connection and remember like growing up and, you know, everyone drinking Dutch Bros coffee. So I like the company, and so I bought into the stock, and I still love it. E.A.T and FSL. So can't stop, won't stop. That's just because there a lot of momentum plays and hyped plays on Twitter. There's so much volume in them. So even if, you know, they don't move a lot, you know, even if it goes up, like I know a lot of people at close on Friday, they loaded E.A.T right before close. And then after market closed, it shot up like, I don't know, 30 cents or something. And a lot of people in the group banked on it because it was like easy money. Like you kind of knew what was going to happen.
You knew what was going on with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that regard, like some of these momentum plays are just like the volume's just there. The hype, the Twitter hype is just there. Like play it while you want to. The earnings ones this week there's like, as you mentioned at the start of this call, there's so many earnings happening this week.
Yes, it's so many for S&P alone.
Yeah, I cannot even begin to pay attention to half of them. So I try and keep it focused on the ones where I think there's going to be either big movement or like people are expecting something and I think it's going to go the other way. So for Tesla, there's a lot of hype lately. So I'm watching that one. I'm not in Tesla. Yeah, I don't think, but I'm looking at it.
You might have an account somewhere you forgot about.
Dude, you're telling me. Hopefully not. That would be bad. Yeah, so Tesla. And the last one, Poorhouse, BBIG. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess cat's out of the bag. That's the one I was talking about earlier that like I low-key hate because it makes no sense. It's like I don't even know what it's at now. Like I think it was around $9 today. I was just staring.
I haven't looked at it, but yeah, it's been involved in the news a lot lately. It's you know, it's the one you hate, but it's the one some other people love, and some people have made a lot of money off of it. It's definitely been involved in the social media platforms I was discussing before. It's definitely got a lot of momentum. I have to agree with that.
Yeah, everyone loves that one. And it's funny, I can't remember, someone else like commented the other day. They were saying like they want to essentially play what everyone thinks is not going to happen, because it does get to a certain point where everyone's like, wow, this stock is running. Let's all buy calls. And a lot of times those, just as fast as they go up, they come back down.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, you almost want to think about the psychology behind them. And like, what are people, is everyone buying calls on this? Like, how are we all going to make money on this? And how, is it going to keep running? Like, does that logically make sense? I don't know. So I try and think about the psychology behind people and how they act as well.
All right. And then, let me ask you, just by looking at things from your perspective, what company has a great investor relations department and why? And when I ask that, is it something easy like the Apples and the Amazons or the Microsofts? Is it something like that? Or is there a small cap company out there that many of us might not know about or invest in or even, you know, buy their product that has a really good management team and investor relations team, you know, involved with them?
I won't name names, but I will say like some of the bigger companies, like the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles, those ones are very, from an IR professional, like from that standpoint, to me, that would be very boring because they are so consistent. There's nothing really interesting going on, right? It's kind of like a rinse and repeat. And a lot of times I've noticed like the IR host on the call, usually it's like your VP or the director. Sometimes it's like some random person from marketing or communications, and you're like, do they even have an IR person? Like, what? Because they just like sit there. They really don't have to do a whole lot. And that's actually why I started at my company recently. And it's been so interesting for me because there's a lot going on, a lot of M&A. We're spinning a subsidiary off. Like, that is interesting to me. Like, that is work. You have to like do stuff about it. And that's fun. You have to like do your job. My last company too, that was a lot of fun. It's kind of like a problem you have to solve, and you have to communicate and get your message across. Because if you don't, then obviously that's bad. But like, at least you have something to do. At least like it's fun.
You're not sitting there twirling your thumbs.
Yeah, exactly. You're engaged. You're doing something. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't like to work for one of those big companies. It'd be a little boring.
Okay. And in our chat, we have somebody asking about Sebastian. What's going on with Sebastian?
What do you mean they asked about him?
Someone just wrote Sebastian in the chat. Chief Boone wrote the name Sebastian in the chat.
Sebastian. Okay, so for everyone who doesn't know and who's listening, Memphis is my cat, and someone in another group had nicknamed him Blind Sebastian, and it just became like a joke. Like, oh,
so it's the same person.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he looks like a Sebastian because he looks like proper gentleman, whatever. And I'm like, whatever. So it's become kind of a joke. And now, like, when we're on the morning calls in the morning, I haven't been on lately, but half the time, like, Memphis is in my ear, like, purring away. And I'll never forget, like, one time JB actually, like, called me on it, like, I can hear your cat. And I was a little embarrassed. Like, I don't get embarrassed, but I was pretty close to being embarrassed that time. So I try and stay on mute. But it's kind of a joke, and it's kind of funny. Everyone knows about Sebastian, just like I try and learn about everybody else's animals and their kids. Everyone has a ton of kids. But it's fun. And yeah, Sebastian's doing great. I don't know, you guys can kind of see, he's now sitting on my lap. So he's just chill right now. Yeah.
All right. Hey, let me ask you real quick. This seems to be the topic of discussion on the show the last 3 or 4 episodes now. Have you watched Squid Games on Netflix?
Okay, no surprise to anybody, but no, I've not.
Yeah, listen, then you're in the minority here because 135 million people have watched it in like a month and a half. So yeah, I just have to tell you, you have to watch it. I'm fascinated by it. I watched 8 episodes in a night. I couldn't put the TV down. Like, I just couldn't walk away. It was amazing. Yeah,
I saw a Bloomberg article about it, it making 900 million or something.
Yeah, it's worth that much for Netflix.
Netflix. And so I was looking at it because that's interesting. And from, like, again, an earnings perspective, I don't know. I care about it, and I think that's interesting. I don't know. What's it about? Isn't it about like people fighting or something?
So anyone listening, I won't spoil it. I've had people tell me on private messages, I shut off the podcast because you're going to spoil it. I won't spoil it. So the best way to describe it is it's a group of people that have been pulled together because they're in financial ruins. So they have high debt, gambling debts, personal debt, whatever it is. And they're put together in this area to play kid games, like red light, green light, 1, 2, 3, and other ones. And basically, whoever wins the games moves on to the end. And whoever is left at the end wins an obscene amount of money, where it's, I want to say a couple, like $100 million or, $50 million, some obscene amount of money where they win. But as you go across each game and you get eliminated from life. If that makes sense.
Like, they kill you?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Oh,
no. Somebody in the chat now telling me I'm obsessed with this. Yes, I'm telling everybody I am obsessed with this. I have to ask everybody who comes on right now if they've seen it. I want to watch it again. It's the show that I got sucked in. It's amazing.
I don't know.
Yes,
I can't.
You get eliminated. You watch it and you get eliminated, and you're like, "Holy crap, that just happened! I can't believe it!" And you just get sucked in.
I don't know. I think it's like a guy thing. Like, you guys watch these videos.
It's a guy thing.
Falling or hurting themselves, and everyone thinks it's so funny. And I'm like, I cringe. Like, I can't watch that. That's awful. Like, I can't stomach it. I don't want to watch someone get hurt. I don't know.
It's funny you said. It's funny you said that because I told my wife and I told my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law last weekend to watch it, and they watched the first episode and they were like, "I'm done." They're like, I can't even believe. My wife said to me, I can't even believe I'm married to you. How do you watch a show like that?
That's kind of like Game of Thrones. Like everyone was really into Game of
Which
Thrones.
I loved.
Okay, granted, I got into it, but it took me like years because I saw the first episode and I was extremely confused because I'm like, hold on, they're brother and sister. I thought they were brother and sister. And then someone's like, well, yeah, they are. And I'm like, ew, like I don't want to watch like a show about incest. Like, ugh, that's just not.
But you have to admit, Game of Thrones is one of the best shows that's ever out there. You know, you're putting that in the same conversation as Breaking Bad. You're putting it in the same conversation as Sopranos. I mean, you're putting it up there with the big shows that the world has gone on discussing for years and years now. It's a big one, and Squid Games is going to be there. I'm telling you. Another season or two, it's going to be mentioned with these shows. It's guaranteed. Book it, save the episode. It's going to be there.
Another season's coming already?
No, well, that's the big thing. Is the person who created the show shopped the show for 10 years and nobody picked it up. Nobody wanted it. Nobody did anything with it. And finally, somebody at Netflix decided, hey, let's run with this. And it's the biggest show Netflix has ever done, ever.
That's
so
amazing.
there has to be a season 2 coming. The guy has not written one. He has ideas for one, but it's still in the works. And it has to be. With it being worth that much money to Netflix, there has to be another season or 2.
Okay, see, I love that story. I'm like, that's great for whoever wrote it, and I hope he does very well. That's a really cute, nice story, but I don't know if I can. I'll think about it this weekend. I'll add it to my list.
You're not interested in watching something where people are getting blown to pieces. I get it. All right. Well, Suzy, I want to thank you for coming on. This was great. You gave us the investor relations side of the discussion with things. Just before we let you go, anything you want to plug, any advice or anything you want to just put out there that we didn't discuss for anyone out there watching or that will watch down the line?
Read your filings.
Okay.
If you don't know something, just ask. Like, it's so much easier to ask, right? Or like Google something as well. Sometimes people ask really silly questions and you're like, it'd be way faster if you just Googled that. So Google it, try and figure it out. Like, you'd rather learn it than, believe something that's not true or not have the full understanding or the implications of something. So just read, be nice to everybody. That's it.
Be nice to everybody. That's always.
I feel like everyone's been fighting lately, especially in our group. Like drama.
Yeah, so. I won't get into it, but I see what you mean, and yes, I agree with that. It hasn't been pleasant at times. I'll leave it at that.
Everyone, like, be nice, and everyone jokes like I'm the mom, but I'm like, hey, like, be nice. Right?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely, I agree. All right, Suzy. Like I said, thanks for coming on. This was great. I really appreciate the insight and the everything you put out, all the info and everything. It really it was a great episode. Thank you very much for coming on. This is going to put a bow on episode number 23. We'll be back next week with episode number 24. Everybody from New York and from the West Coast with Suzy, everybody, good night. See you next time.